Well, hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us for our session 2 of the Go for Gold. I got a chance to talk to most all of you this week, and we talked about different ways to, get back to executive for some of you, to strengthen your executive status, and to build your own business as well as your team. Now, today, we're going to look at the topic of team meetings. Before we get into that, I wanted just to share a few announcements that some of you might be wondering about. First of all, we had a meeting this morning with our Platinum and Diamond executives talking about that $500 minimum requirement for the 6 months. And after a lot of deliberation back and forth with your upline leaders, we did make the decision that for this 6-month period from January to June, we will not require consultants to have the $500 minimum, and instead we're going to reevaluate. So from July to December of 2016, we'll put that $500 minimum back in place. So I think most people will be happy about that. Of course, you still want to encourage them to get started now, but there won't be that that pressure and just that feeling for those that are a little bit stuck, that we don't want them to feel like we're kicking them out. Another thing that I don't know if you all saw, but Joe is going to be on the road this summer doing some, kind of like what we used to do with the Sizzle Tour. We're calling it the Summer Road Show, and July 1st, he'll be in Columbus, Ohio. The 12th, he'll be in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the 13th in Tyler, Texas. So that's very exciting. And of course, we had an exciting week with the launch of our Facebook page and the Get Ready for Summer specials. So lots of good stuff going on. But like I said, today, we're going to get into the topic of team meetings and best practices and look at really the who, what, where, when, and why of meetings. Having meetings live in person, really just like a program like this Go for Gold helps you to focus on key parts of your business. Your team meetings should serve that purpose for you and your team. It's an ideal way to share, our Pure Haven Essentials culture with others. So hopefully you're inviting guests, and your team will be inviting guests to take a look at our business opportunity. But team meetings serve much more than just a reason to get together with your existing team. Like I said, it's an opportunity meeting as well. And that's one of the things that first and foremost, when we think about why meetings are important, why should we do them each and every month? First of all, especially those who have small teams. This is how you build it big. And when you have a regularly scheduled monthly meeting, you want to actually have that planned in advance. And then as you're doing parties, share that information with all the guests at the parties, with prospects. Your focus at parties and in all you do, really at this level of executive and above, should be beyond selling. You can think of your parties, your workshops as a mini job fair. And the focus there, you go in with the mindset that you will meet people at the party. You get your game face on and focus on the fact that you will meet people that will be interested in joining you. We've got something great to offer. So that's one reason, and you could even kind of consider it an opportunity event each month. So what I used to do back when I was with the other company, with the Pampered Chef, I would have my regular team meeting, but the half an hour before was set up as an opportunity event. And so to do that each month for you, for your team, where they can bring people, that sets the standard that we are planning for growth. It also shows that you take your business seriously as a leader, that it's not just a little, sideline, take it as it comes, but you're a leader, you're running a business, and people want to be affiliated with someone that's committed. Dee Davidson says this in her signature on her email. She says, work with a mentor who's willing to work as hard on your business as you are. People want to work with professionals. So beyond the business opportunity part of the monthly meeting, you want to be proactively training. And if you haven't been reviewing those monthly team meeting agendas that we send out to all executives each month, that's a great place to start. There's wonderful content. You probably might tweak it depending on, where your team is at with things. You might not even have time to do all of the content at your meetings, but those agendas are designed to use as a guide, and depending on what you see as the biggest challenges that your team is facing, you take that and you build on it and you modify it. The third reason why team meetings are important: when your team gets to know each other, when they start to find things in common, they find they're working toward the same goals, they're going to build friendships, just like many of our executives have. You look forward to coming to summit and to conferences. Just like that, your team will look forward to seeing their new friends at your team meetings. So you do want to allow for sharing, for networking, time to get to know each other. Starting the meeting with sharing their why is a great way to do that at some of your first meetings. And then inspiration. So at any meeting, you want to sort of think about an inspirational send-off to those meetings. Remember that people remember what you say first and what you say last. So the end of a meeting is an ideal time for a call to action, maybe a motivational closing, something to remind them of what they should do and why they should do it, to really send them off into the universe to build their business. So I've got a couple of polls here, and I know we've got a smaller group, a smaller group here on the training live, but let me just ask you where you're at in regard to your local team meetings. So go ahead and click on as many of these as apply. Are you doing a local meeting every month? Do you do them with another executive? Have you had at least two, or maybe you've never held a local team meeting? Go ahead and click in your response. Okay, not seeing anybody clicking in. I'm hoping that you might be on an iPad, and if that's the case, the functionality is sometimes not quite all there on an iPad. Okay, so it looks like some of you have responded, and the ones that are on, you are holding local meetings every single month, which is fantastic. So I'm glad to hear that. As we said, we talked about why these meetings are so important. So now, and also, oops, that's, I didn't change my slide. It's part of your role as a leader here with Pure Haven Essentials. But anyway, when? Let's talk a little bit about when you do it. How often should you be doing your meeting? So as I said, doing it monthly is important. And I've heard some that actually say they're doing weekly meetings and conference calls with their team. Now, sometimes leaders might feel that more meetings means more productivity. What I've actually found is that when you distract your team from income-producing activity by holding too many meetings, that can be counterproductive for both you and for them. So my recommendation is that you do one group meeting per month. Then use the 4 onboarding calls for new consultants, and then a once-a-month individual coaching for those beyond their first month. If you're running the Rising Star program, then you can, that's every other week. So those are for the high potential people. So that makes sense, every other week. But otherwise, a once-a-month individual coaching call makes sense. And if you are holding lots of parties yourself and you have your team shadow you for more training, that's another way that you can have those touch points with your local team. And of course, there's plenty of training available with our Wednesday national calls. So like I said, sometimes leaders trick themselves into thinking that they need to spend lots of times doing meetings, and then as a leader, you're kind of sometimes justifying the reason that you yourself are not doing parties. Long term, really until you're at the platinum level, your main activity should still be doing parties, workshops. Now, the timing of your monthly meeting depends on your availability and the availability of the majority of your team. But I found great success doing Sunday night meetings and doing like the first Sunday night of the month. That allowed me enough time to get my recognition together, but it wasn't too late to affect activity for the current month. So again, earlier in the month is better. That first week, Sunday nights worked for me, but you've got to figure out what is going to work best for your own team. Okay, and feel free to ask questions as we go along using the chat bar. Let's move on to the how do we do meetings. And for virtual meetings, you might use a freeconference.com, or you could even jazz it up with a webinar like this, and that can be worthwhile, especially if you ever want to go over some of the back office reports. It's just nice sometimes to switch it up instead of it just being a call. GoToMeeting, this platform that I use, has a free 30-day trial that you might want to try with your team, just again for something different. So let me ask you in regard to conference call team meetings. So is that something that you're doing? Because I'm looking at who's on here, and you all have long distance people. Are you doing a monthly conference call? Have you never done one? Occasionally, are you doing it? As you're clicking in your response, again, for most of the time, for most teams that have long distance people, a conference call line works fine, and those are free. Some things to keep in mind as far as how long you want to make that conference call. So you might notice that our Wednesday national calls are always designed to be right at 30 minutes. That's about the maximum amount of time that people can stay focused. So in fact, the average attention span for most Americans is only about 9 minutes. So it's important to change things up, maybe with different speakers, just like we do with the Wednesday call, asking them a question if the group is small enough. If you've got a small enough group, you can make it interactive. On a webinar, you can do polls like the one we just did. And like I said, no more than 30 minutes. A webinar, sometimes 40 to 45 will work, but you lose people's attention when it's longer than that, and then they'll be less likely to join you next time if it runs too long. So guidelines are to have an agenda, keep to the agenda, start on time, end on time, and that respects your team's time. So let's get back, though, to the local meetings. And as I said, even if you only have a couple team members that are in your town, you want to build in your own backyard. It's more fun to have a local team because you're not alone. And quite honestly, you want to teach your long distance team members to be doing the same, following your lead. So if you've got people long distance, help them to get their own local team meetings going. And, sometimes people on your team might think that the only way you built your business was maybe you were in early and you got leads from the home office. But when they see that you're actually inviting people, that you're generating on your own, people you're meeting at parties, they will respect you more and they'll feel more empowered to do the same. Now, if the only reason you have a team is because you got home office leads and your new people aren't to that level, they might feel defeated thinking that's the only way to build a business. So again, you intentionally doing parties, meeting people, and inviting them to your meetings to take a closer look, that is something that's duplicatable that your team will think, oh, if she can bring 3 guests to each meeting, then I can do it too. All right, let's talk about who to include. And all of you, I'm just looking at who's on here, all of you are in an area that, all of you have just recently moved to your area. So who do you include? You've got people in different locations, so who do you include in your meetings? So we believe, and you heard this at conference, that we're better together. Opening your team meetings to everyone in the area, it's just a best practice. Back in my old company, we used to call it providing hospitality. But it's the old saying that what goes around comes around, and you might find yourself in a situation with one of your team superstars that lives somewhere else, and you'll be grateful that they had a local team to meet up with. So in my past, I moved to different locations. What I did was I immediately started meetings in my new location. I also went back to my old location for several months to help them to strengthen the meetings and get it going themselves. Yeah, I immediately started. I invited consultants that were not in my downline to attend. I kind of felt that with the title of executive, that a monthly meeting was just part of the responsibility. So even if I didn't have a local team, I did a monthly meeting that first month that I moved there and invited others from other teams to come, but it didn't take long to build my own team in the area. So another question, if you've got downline executives, should they do their meeting with you? Well, for a while, but the goal would be that eventually every executive is creating their own culture with their own team. Now, if you're very local to each other, consider doing your own meeting monthly, and then maybe once a quarter or twice a year you get together as a big group. My thought is that when 2 or more executive teams are doing everything together, it can stifle their own growth. There can get to be too much comfort in those numbers, and it's not a good indication of whether your own individual group is growing or not growing. Now, in Indianapolis, when I lived there, I had 9 downline executives. All of them did their own meetings. What happened was the executive leader would come to my meeting first. That I had mine early in the month. They would get their recognition, they would get ideas, but then they took that back, and within the next few days, they had their own team meeting with their own team. So again, if you're just relying on other executives, it can lead to you not continuing to grow. So let's take a look next at where you're going to have your meetings. Go ahead and click in where most of your meetings have been. Is it at your home? Do you get a free meeting room? Are you paying for a place? Is it in a different location each time? Go ahead and click in where your meetings are held. And I'll tell you, there's no right or wrong on this. As you're clicking that in, I always had meetings in my home. I would kick my family out for the night, so there were no distractions. By having it at home, it kept it duplicatable for everybody. So they felt like, if they were a leader, they could do it as well. Looks like most all of you here are having it in a different location each time. So again, there's no right or wrong, but when you have meetings in a paid meeting room, sometimes that creates an impression that, oh, I could never afford to be a leader and pay for a meeting room myself, and it can discourage them. Some leaders use a free meeting room. It's great if you can get it in a private location. But just to meet like in an open restaurant without a door to close, that's a big distraction to holding an effective meeting. It's not recommended. You want to create a friendly atmosphere, but a professional atmosphere. It's not just a coffee chat, it's a business meeting. So I've been to a number of meetings, the ones that are in restaurants that don't have a door to close, it's really a distraction. Now, can you rotate locations? So all of you on the webinar live said that's what you do. It absolutely can work. Maybe you have people on different sides of town, and you could rotate someone's home each month to make it more convenient for some, and it also helps delegate a little of the responsibility. Ultimately, the goal would be that they become a leader on their own and do their own meeting on the south or north or whatever side of town. So that can work as well. Now, these 4 parts that I'm going to share with you of a meeting, I believe that these are best practices for both local and virtual meetings. Okay, so here we go. Training and information is part of it. Socializing or networking. Recognition is really important. People want to feel important, and then that goal setting or call to action. So while it might make the most sense to end your training, a call or a meeting with the call to action, with the goal setting, the other parts you can do in any order, no right or wrong. Now, like I said, you've got lots of content, each of those monthly agendas. We put icebreakers and training into the team meeting agenda. So I'm not going to go over all those ideas here because you've already got them. But keep that in mind, that those are important. You want people to get to know each other. You want them to socialize, and you also want to provide valuable content that makes a difference for them. But recognition, because that's such a big topic in itself, we're going to cover that specifically on the next webinar in 2 weeks. Like I said, the goal setting, the call to action, we provide some of that for you in the team meeting agenda. You can also find motivational stories like ones that you've heard me tell, the geese that fly in the V shape, and I've shared that before, the daffodil principle. I usually share that each spring. Or it can be a specific activity challenge like a booking blitz, or it could be a challenge to have 5 live sponsoring conversations with people, or it could be to help every host this month to earn their 2 booking reward. But having something specific that they are kind of called to do, that's important. Who does what? Delegation in your meetings. It's smart to relieve some of the burden for you, but also you want to be grooming leaders. So I want to keep you involved here, and if you could type into the chat bar maybe something that you have thought about delegating or already have delegated in your team meetings. So, again, when you delegate, it involves people, it grooms leaders, it also helps to build attendance. So as I'm watching for your comments to come in here, one of the things obviously that comes to mind would be to delegate a training segment. Maybe you've got somebody who had a great $1,000 party, and you could have them share what were some of their success steps. If you're recognizing someone for sponsoring, have them prepared to share a little bit about how they were successful in sponsoring. Some other things would be even as simple as bringing refreshments, or it could be, I'm seeing some, so it could be, being the greeter, being the person that sits at the door and welcomes everyone in. Setting up a product display, because you want to have a product display at every single team meeting. So when people feel that they've got a role to play, they're much more likely to be there, right? That makes sense. Okay, so again, keeping them involved, and maybe, and I talked about if they've accomplished something, that having them share. Maybe your team is so new, or with the transition, they're kind of stuck. So let me give you one specific idea that is really working well for people lately. I've been sharing this idea with some of you on phone calls, but I don't think all of you got this. We're calling it being a product tester, or being a product reviewer. So the idea is that any consultant, even if they're stuck, could invite a friend, a family member, an acquaintance to try some of our products and write a product review. So maybe it's putting together a bundle of the shampoo, the conditioner, the shower gel. And maybe it's that friend who never would host a party for you. You could say to your friend, I'm always looking for real-life testimonials to share at my parties. Would you mind trying these products for a few days and writing a product review for me? So number one, that gets products in people's hands, and that's a good thing, right? They're going to love the product. We know that. You're going to have some product testimonials that you can start gathering, and that's good to share at your parties, but it also introduces the idea that this is what we do. We do parties. And so it could then lead to a conversation after they've tried the product of, would they be interested in hosting a party? It could even be just purchase. So once they've tried the products, you could say, by the way, this month, if you wanted to place an order, we've got a great lemon sugar body scrub for free with your purchase. So it's a way to ease into action. It's baby steps. But the reason I shared that with you here is, what could you do with that? Well, you could share that idea with some of the people on your team. And in order kind of help make sure that they do that, you could say, you know, actually what I'd love for you to do, Susie, is to have several of those product reviews with some of your products this week, since you don't have any parties on the books. If you could get a few product reviews going, and then at our meeting coming up, you could share how that all works. So that would be a very specific way to get that person moving, but also then get them to come to the meeting. So I hope that you like that idea and that you give that a try. Beyond the typical meeting each month, you might consider some special opportunities to do something like, you know, holiday weekends, whether it's the you know, winter holidays, or even in the summer, doing some sort of community service based around the holidays. And, you know, again, you're building a community, so you can get together for more than just a training meeting. I've taken teams to do food bank volunteering, Christmas caroling, other sort of community service. So that's something to consider. You know, another one that I just heard, actually I heard about this 6 months or so ago. There was a field trip. So whether it's actually several things. So there was a field trip that was to a water treatment plant, and that can be very eye-opening and very much related to what we do, right? So the water system, so a water treatment plant. Another one was some of the movies that you guys have been renting. So the movie Stink was another one that would be a special meeting, and you're much more likely to get a big draw. And again, you're always welcome to vary from the meeting agenda we suggest, and sometimes doing something really special will show people how important it is to come to the meeting. Now, at your conference and executive summit, personally, I always set up a time before or after the conference to do a special event. It was a thank you from me for their investment in coming. So we had our conferences in different cities. When we were in Chicago, I treated them to an architectural boat tour. In New Orleans, I set up a cooking class. Even just like a pizza party the night before the conference where everyone would get together. Now, personally at conference, I would always reserve a suite. It was more expensive, but I would entertain in my room. And I offered an incentive for the newest executives that promoted. They got to room with me for free, which was great to get to know them, and it helped offset some of their cost. I ended up having, I think, a total, when I left that company, I had 25 downline executives. So again, it was a great way to get to know the newest executives in that way, and they really worked toward it. Each year, I would plan a visit to my executives. Like I said, I had them all across the country, Boston to Sacramento. So I would plan a visit to their team meeting as a special event. I asked them to set up a party for me to attend, which was a good learning opportunity, as well as doing a meeting for everyone, and even a special lunch or dinner before or after the meeting for their high achievers. And then once a year, I had a big retreat weekend for those that achieved executive level. And it was something that people worked hard for to promote in time. I would have a guest speaker, special events like massages, cooking classes, shopping sprees, as well as training and inspiration, and of course, a little bit of socializing. So what about, what's keeping your meetings from being successful? Let's go ahead and click in. What's your biggest challenge? This is our last poll for today. Your biggest challenge for team meetings. And we'll talk about these with our coaching call one-on-one. Okay, so lower attendance and not getting guests there. If your attendance is low, as the leader, you set the pace. And if you're not having guests, again, both of those work hand in hand. It's up to you as the leader to show your team that you know how to do that, that you are intentionally inviting people. And so it's a bit of a numbers game. If you don't have guests there, you've got to take that step back and say, well, why? Well, how many people did I invite? One. Okay, if I invited one and I didn't have any, I need to increase my odds. So maybe the next month you intentionally, personally invite 5. And so if you invite 5 and you get one guest there, that's about normal odds. It's really inviting enough people. If you have low attendance from your consultants, I want you to think about, what we teach our hosts in host coaching. You want to, just like our hosts do, you want to layer your invitations to your meeting. So it's putting it out on Facebook, it's posting it on your calendar, it's sending an email with the date of the meeting. And just like our hosts, we want to do that reminder a day or two before, letting them know how important it is for them to be there, as well as some of the ideas you just learned with delegating. When people have a job to do, they're much more likely to do it. And I always used to say to people, you know, if your business is going well, the meeting needs you. If your business is not going well, you need the meeting. So that might be a few ideas to help you on the attendance. Content, you should have the information. If you ever need more help with devising content that's appropriate, let me know. Budget, you know, keep it simple. Again, simple refreshments, make it duplicatable. And if you have other challenges or problems with your meetings, we can talk about those one-on-one. But I appreciate you taking time on a Friday afternoon with me. Upcoming topics, our next one will focus on recognition. Then after that, communication and communicating best with your team. And finally, the fifth one is time management. So I hope that what you'll do from here is use my scheduler for your next coaching call and do that before June 3rd. And plan your next team meeting. Get the word out now for that. Hopefully it's first week of June. And with long distance and local people, you want to make sure you get the word out so that they save the date and start planning on it and start inviting guests. Then start thinking about recognition. So what are you currently doing? Is it working? And what sort of activity do you think should be recognized based on your team structure? And we'll go over that more. So with that, unless you have specific questions, I will let you get on with your weekend. Thank you all for participating. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.